And with that, Dayton, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I thought, we've been doing these badge episodes. I think it might be helpful just to remind us, how we came up with the badges, what purpose they serve, just kind of generally how that started. So I thought maybe before we jump into cognition, let's start there if that's okay with you.
We arrived at the idea of putting together badges because we felt they were a really simple way to communicate the benefits of the things that we have in our buildings. So I think when we started our research into all the different ways that we can improve a building, what became clear is that there were different, I'm going to say, like, nuclei of impact. So different centers of impact that were pretty specific to a certain aspect of the way that we function, or the way that our bodies and our minds are treated by our environments in ways that positively impact the way that we experience life. So the badges were just a really simple way to say, hey, instead of dropping a bunch of journal entries and statistics that are somewhat illegible and reasonably nuanced, because it takes a lot of discretion to come through research papers and to be a good reader of those things. So instead of hitting people with walls of research, what we decided to do is, as our top of line communication, just create these badges for the very simple centers of ourselves and our experiences that are improved by our environments. So today's badge, cognitive performance, is one of our 6 badges. And as is quite clear by the name, which is the point of the badge, it focuses on the ways that our environment improves our cognition, our cognitive health, our brains, and the functions of our brains.
So let's talk about how the environment can have an impact. And I remember, there was this whole movement at one point in time to introduce stairs.
Yeah.
Like more stairs, less elevators, less, because we wanted people to walk more. And so, take the stairs, don't take the elevator. And so that, to me, that's the most simplistic example of how, our space can impact our behavior because we can guide people one way or the other. But let's talk about, how can spaces impact our cognitive performance and behavior that might impact that.
Yeah. Let me see. I might be oversimplifying here, and I think part of the podcast format, what I've learned is that I always leave these episodes being like, oh, I should have said that. So it's impossible to be complete. But to think about how to break it down into simple categories, I came up with 4 that I think are pretty well encapsulating what we do, or how we try to impact people through our frequency buildings. And I think the ways that we try to impact them are in people's sleep, their stress levels, their pollutants, so their exposure to pollutants, and figuring out the ways that we can promote positive habits or changes, adaptations. So I think starting with sleep, there are a number of ways that we can positively impact sleep. We talked about a lot of them in the circadian health episode. The lighting that we expose people to in the mornings and the evenings is super relevant to their sleep quality. And for what it's worth, sleep quality and circadian rhythm is correlated with a kind of a litany of important measures of cognitive performance, including those reaction times that we talked about. Prefrontal cortex functions have been found to be affected by one night of sleep deprivation. And they say that it could take up to 5 years to reverse the damage felt by night shift workers. So just a long-term statistic to show the long-term impact of a disrupted circadian rhythm. So I'd say they're all pieces to say that sleep is super important to our cognitive performance. I'm dropping statistics like a nerd, but honestly, nobody needs stats to know this. We've all had the poor night's sleep that's followed by the poor day of thinking, poor day of attention. So we affect sleep in a lot of ways. It's the circadian habits that we take. It's the red lights at night to avoid the blue light exposure. It's the sad lights or circadian lights in the morning to trigger that circadian rhythm. It's exposure to sauna. It's trying to outfit bedrooms in a certain way that people find more calming. So I'd say one broad focus of ours is sleep. I'd say another is stress. There are a lot of ways that we can promote positive responses to stress, and there are a lot of ways that we can remove unnecessary triggers of stress. So we've talked about a lot of these, given that this is, I think, our 6th badge episode now. So we've already talked about our emotional sustainability, the ways that patterns and our environment can affect our stress. We know that the rectilinear forms that most buildings are built in they're not natural. And when we can inject little doses of natural patterns or nature itself into environments, it really positively impacts stress.
Are there other habits or things we can do every day that will be positive, will have a positive impact on our cognitive performance?
Yeah, I'd say abiding by the circadian habits that we recommend is really positive. Using SAD lamps in the morning, and SAD stands for seasonal effectiveness disorder. It could also be called the circadian lamp. But using SAD lamps in the morning and throughout the day can give you a boost of energy, and that energy corresponds to higher performance on cognitive tests, better attention levels, overall just better performing brain. So having a SAD lamp on your desk, not being afraid to use it when you're feeling a little tired, can make a huge difference, especially as we're entering into fall and winter. Otherwise, like exercise, movement, like you mentioned, even taking the stairs is hugely important. Just getting that blood flowing throughout the day. And those things come with exercise, movement, sauna, if you have one, or if you have access at the gym, is great. Taking a cold shower can provide a jolt if it's something that you find you have an appetite for. I personally do. So it's maybe worth a test as long as you do your appropriate research and consultation beforehand to make sure that you don't have a condition or a certain factor about you that would prevent that from being safe. Yeah, I think those are a few. And I
That's
actually,
great. Yeah.
one more that I would add is just folding in elements of your day that use different parts of your brain. So that can mean so many different things to so many different people. But if you're an artist, make a point to draw every day. If you're a musician, make a point to play the piano for 5-10 minutes. If you're an athlete, make a point to play a sport. If you're a cook, make a point to cook a meal. But all of these things contribute to kind of the maintenance of the different parts of our brain. And it is purely my opinion and my anecdotal finding that I'm having the most fun and producing my best cognitive output when all of those things are engaged.
We have an interesting partnership with Blade. You want to talk a little bit about maybe that and what their technology does that's different?
So Blade Air produces air filters that use electromagnetic technology, which essentially stops what's called face loading on the filter. So the big issue with HVAC filters that filter really fine particles is that they're normally not very efficient, because what they do is that the tiny filters get blocked by larger particles. So the flow rate drops pretty significantly pretty quickly. Okay, so the result of a lower flow rate means that HVAC has to work harder to move the same amount of air, which is inefficient for energy, and it's mechanically poor for the machine. Like it'll wear down quicker because it's working harder. So what Blade Air does is they have a frame. It's this electric frame that essentially clears face loading by having an electric reaction with these particles that stops them from clinging. So the beauty of Blade Air is that you get the filtration benefit of a really high grade, it'd be a MERV 13, MERV 14 filter without the energy inefficiency. And furthermore, they're filtered because it uses this technology. It keeps the same electric frame, so it's a lot less replaceable hardware. So over time, there's a great payback, of investment. So over long periods of time, you save money, you improve air quality.